us on all forms of social media. You can find us at facebook.com/faithandwhatever. Best way to reach us is at faithandwhatever.com there. Or you can find me on Anchor. That's a cool new one.
You cannot find me on Anchor because it's only for Apple.
And that sucks.
Why would they do that? They're missing out on the vast majority of smartphones, right, Chris?
Yep. Are most people not Anchor users? Are most people non-iPhone users now?
Globally, I'm sure it's like 10 to 1. 10 Android to 1. Only just because of availability and price.
Yeah, that's funny. Just because the rest of the world doesn't matter in anything else. So I don't know why they would matter in this either. I'm just kidding.
Because a lot of people can only afford a $50 phone.
Yeah, and to be fair, Apple shouldn't be charging this much money for a phone that does less than a Samsung. That's okay. Before we start the news, that's the tangent I'm going to get on at this point.
No more tangents.
Because it's so frustrating that I'm supposed to have, the greatest phone, the phone that changes everything every time the update comes out.
Right.
And it's not even doing half the things that your HTC does.
So I thought I have a LG. I saw a 128 gig SD cards on sale for $30, and I was like, why not?
And just throw it in there.
Yeah.
So that drives me nuts. Anyhow,
18.2% of smartphone sales
are
iPhone.
Oh, so 80% basically are non-Apple smartphones. Is that what you're saying?
That's what this says.
Yeah. So frustrating. Come on, Apple, get it together. Did you see that they're getting ready to create a new, what do you call it? Like not factory, but like where the offices are, where the main offices are.
Headquarters?
Yeah, headquarters. They're making a new HQ.
The spaceship one?
Yeah, it looks like a UFO.
No, it's supposed to look like the home button. That's what it's based on. It's the home. So all the white stuff in the middle basically is like trees and like botanical stuff.
It's hollow, right?
Yeah, but it's natural. It's organic scenery and beautiful trees.
Because nothing is more natural than an iPhone.
Built in China. Harvested from Chinese metals. Made with the hands of children.
So Wyoming Democratic caucuses. Bernie Sanders picks up another win.
But not really.
Yeah. Okay. So this is exactly what I'm going to ask. This is what we're going to talk about. So
I can't find that link anymore. So
it's a new one. This is from CNN.com, written by Eric Bradner, and we're going to start putting the links in the actual YouTube videos subscription. So if you want to follow what we're talking about, Bernie Sanders wins the Wyoming Democratic caucuses on Saturday, kind of. Okay, providing his campaign with one more jolt of momentum before the race against Hillary Clinton heads east. So,
why do you mean kind of?
Well, Wyoming had 14 delegates. Each of them got 7. So he was the projected winner, but he didn't really win because they just split the delegates. So
it was like 56-44 or something like that in the vote.
Yeah. So he won.
He only got 7, and
Clinton got 7. So it was basically a wash.
Yeah. So how does that? Okay. So how do delegation promises split when the popular vote is that lopsided?
There is a whole history of it, and we really don't have time to go into it. But if someone wanted to look it up,
enough said.
There was a problem with the popular vote picking the party candidate. And so they went to a delegate system so that the party can have more say in who the candidate is versus just a straight popular vote.
Okay, yeah.
And it is kind of coming back to bite them, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, it certainly seems like that. So here are the numbers. So Sanders wins 55.7% of the vote to Clinton's 44.3%. Each candidate gets 7 delegates. That helps Clinton maintain her pledged delegate lead over Sanders, 1,304 to 1,075. So I was looking up the numbers. There's like another 20 of these left or something like that, right? Some big ones. And then the big ones are still to come, right?
And she'll probably get the super delegates.
And yeah, so there's my question. A little quick.
So it's a super delegates. It's like 1,700 to 1,300.
Right. But so here's my pushback on that. So California has 435 delegates to get rid of. New York also has a boat ton. So the host of the Young Turks, I don't ever really know how to pronounce his first name. I forget his name.
Is it Mark?
No. It's like Sinek or something like that. He was talking about how that's actually the super delegate point that you bring up, Chris, actually isn't that big of a deal because super delegates change their minds all the time, and they did that to Clinton in 2008 when they switched to Obama, right? They had originally pledged their support to her, and then Obama came back and dominated the popular vote, and they switched at the DNC.
So they just saw a better candidate later on.
And so do you think that's a thing that will happen this time? Is that something that we should kind of be expecting from the Democratic side, or is that? I think I'm not asking us to theorize. I'm just asking what's more historically true in that do superdelegates often switch their pledges at the last minute like that you are aware of, or do they kind of stay consistent?
I don't know, because superdelegate, the whole system hasn't been around all that long.
Okay,
I mean,
because
it
I
only
don't even
goes
know what
back,
that is. I'd never learned about
like
the superdelegate.
35 years or something.
Okay.
It was like late 70s, early 80s. I
Is
could
that
be
a delegate
completely
that's
wrong on that, but the
worth
current
more?
system, I think that's when they went to it.
So is this still the Electoral College?
No.
Okay.
This
That's
is a whole different, it's
Whole
its
new
own
system.
thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's a whole new system that we've set up
Yeah.
Okay.
That they set up, the Democratic Party.
for themselves.
Yeah.
Not applying to the
No,
RNC.
it's not like a federal program or
Got it.
anything like that.
Okay. So I don't know. How do you feel about Bernie's chances? Do you think he's gonna?
I think he's grown in popularity recently.
he crushes everybody
That's what I feel like.
in all the polls. I mean, in the CNN polls, Politico polls, like that's the one thing I know. Young Turks takes a lot of heat for being pretty leftist, and I see that, and I understand why. But they are right in the sense of that they say that he kills Trump, he kills Sanders. It's insane. Clinton and Cruz are pretty close to each other in terms of like CNN polls there, but it's like 12-point gap, 10.8 point gap with Sanders and basically everybody on the Republican side.
And maybe that type of polling is more recent than some of the promised delegates, I guess, or pledged delegates to Clinton. I'm not sure when those type of things were pledged, but I think Sanders has grown a lot recently. I think he was kind of the underdog, maybe 3 months ago. But now just so much stuff has come out about Clinton that is just so distasteful, especially to people are tired of seeing just professional politicians take office. Not saying that Sanders is not that, but I'm saying Clinton kind of exemplifies
She's the embodiment of the problem with the current system.
Sure,
correct.
sure.
And I think that that was, while that was known, I don't think it was quite known to the extent that it is now, or quite talked about it. I mean, obviously, when you get in these races, everything kind of comes out, and I think the kind of stuff that's coming out about Sanders is not quite as distasteful, especially to the younger vote. I think the way that what he stands for, I think a lot of the younger votes are going to see that as more ideal.
Well, it is interesting to me that consistency is so valued for us, and I think that can be a good thing. But I also think, like when people change their mind on things, I don't think that's necessarily as bad of a thing as people make it out to be. I think on human rights issues, it's a little bit. You watch Sanders defending the LGBT community in 1995. I just watched a video yesterday where he was chastising a guy who made a comment about putting homos in the army in 95. And he said, you've just insulted tens of thousands of people. You should apologize to them, blah, blah, blah. And then you see Hillary Clinton in 2002 or 2003 with the whole New York State senator thing. They're like, do you support gay rights? And she's like, no. And then in 2013, it's like, I fully support it, and I've always been in defense of it. So maybe that's a little bit inconsistent there. But the idea of being able to grow and learn, I think, is something that I don't want to
that's a value,
kind of over critique.
part of the human condition.
Yeah, and so maybe she's not as terrible in that regard. I don't think she's great. But Chris, so here's the math. With 55% of the remaining delegates in New York, Pennsylvania, and California, there's a senior aide from Hillary Clinton's party that said that by the time we get to California, we only need to meet threshold to win. Bernie Sanders can win 85%, and we're fine. And then Sanders is banking on momentum to keep Clinton from officially clinching the nomination until the convention when the superdelegates will vote. So it seems like it's becoming a long shot. I don't necessarily know.
Long shot
for Sanders to clinch there.
Because she only has to hit, there's like a number, it's 2,200 and change.
Yeah.
And the first person to hit that number wins, basically.
Like automatically?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically he's just trying to hold out and survive the 12th round, or the 11 rounds, and then get to the 12th round and go for the knockout punch with the superdelegates.
Because if they go into a convention without anybody having met that threshold, then which is basically what's kind of happening on the Republican side.
Sanders' campaign manager, Jeff Weaver, said, if you look at the math, and if you want to talk about just the math, the truth is that it is very, very, very unlikely that either candidate will go into the convention with the majority needed of pledged delegates in order to win.
Yeah.
Does that seem true?
I don't know, because Hillary historically does better in areas that have large minority voting populations.
Yeah, Sanders hasn't fared too well so far, even this year with that stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. So really, some of the states that are left could go her way in that sense.
Yeah. So
we'll see. I mean, most people that I talk to, I don't even know if I've met a Hillary supporter. Just all they know is they just don't want to see Hillary or Trump in office. That's all I know.
Yeah, that kind of seems to be the consensus that I'm feeling around my friends as well.
Which is ironic for them supposedly to be the front runners on both parties. Why is it that it feels like this could just be cultural, total?
I actually know people who are Hillary supporters for no other reason than they want to see a woman president.
Well, that's sexist.
It's a horrible reason to vote for anyone.
Sexism, pure sexism. I mean, that's totally inappropriate. But that's probably going to be a majority of our votes, I guess.
Yeah, so that'll be an interesting thing to keep an eye on. You'll have to stay tuned for next week. We're going to make 2016 predictions for the rest of the year. So the presidential one will be on there. So we're really excited to see how many of those I'm right on and how many of you guys will be trying to keep up with me.
Man, that's going to be unfortunate.
As far as all that goes. All right, so here's another one. And this one kind of worked me up a little bit. I don't often get worked up over politics stuff because... frankly, I'm just not that smart about it, and so I don't quite understand. But this, is from IWF.org, which is independentwomen'sforum.org, and it's by Patrice J. Lee. And the title is Obama, White House Pushing Risky Home Lending. So here's just an interesting lesson. If you haven't watched Big Short yet, I would totally recommend going to watch it.
I have not seen it.
It is a fantastic movie. All of the performances are great in there. Christian Bale plays a really great weird dude. Who's the guy who played Michael Scott in The Office?
Right.
Steven, what's his name? Spectacular, and just there's a lot of good in that movie, and it really did a number to help teach me about why the bubble collapsed and what kind of the problems were at that kind of stuff. So the housing market, and this is the article, the housing market came roaring back, but according to the Obama administration, if you're poor or young, you wouldn't know that. To stimulate home ownership among these two demographics, the admin is pushing to once again lax standards on lending to people with weak credit. If this sounds familiar, it was this flawed policy that led to the risk lending practice and irresponsible borrowing which fueled our last recession. Since the financial crisis in 2008, the government has assumed major control of the housing market by ensuring 80 to 90% of all new loans through the FHA. New rules were set ostensibly to prevent the housing bubble again, but the FHA and the White House are now pushing banks to relax those rules and make loans to Americans with lower credit that might make home buying a stretch. Quick example, under FHA terms, a borrower with a 500 credit score and 3.5 down should qualify for a loan. However, many banks would reject this, preferring one with more to put down and or a higher credit score, in the 700s and above. This is why credit restoration is so important. I worked for a credit restoration company for a while, and it was terrible dealing with people's credit.
Yeah, I could imagine.
I hated it. Such a headache. Fun, but awful. So as the Washington Post explains, banks prefer to be cautious about lending to those who may not have the means to repay the loans, knowing that they are on the hook one way or another. And so Chris and I had a good spat about this a little bit ago. But what do we think? What do you?
So I talked to my mom about this today. She worked for my brother for a while. He did some loan modification stuff. She didn't seem too concerned, and she wasn't know how accurate a statement it was to say that this kind of federal policies, what that would lead to the housing crisis. A lot of those types of the crisis came from balloon payments and adjustable rate mortgages, and as opposed to FHA loans. Mm-hmm. She thought, well, her opinion was they're fairly strict into applying for those things, and if you were to qualify for an FHA loan, it becomes federally insured. So I'm not quite sure how much that would play into another housing crisis. When it was more of the private banks doing some sketchy loaning, as opposed to lower guidelines on FHA loans.
What do you think, Chris?
Well, I think obviously it was a huge problem, and there are a lot of facets to why we got in the mess in the first place. But everybody loved blaming Bush, but they forget that under Clinton, Bill, back in the 90s, there was a push from the top down to loosen restrictions on lending and to come up with kind of other clever ways to loan money to people who wouldn't otherwise qualify or who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford it. And that kind of laid the groundwork to set up, a lot of those types of things, the balloon payments, adjustable rates, because they were looking for all these kind of clever ways to get people in.
Right.
And I mean, it's such a bad idea, right? If you can't afford a house, you can't afford a house. And
Right.
I'm sorry. I mean, there was a time when I had awful credit, like in the 500s, and I didn't try to buy a house because I knew I couldn't afford a house.
Right.
If they'd given me a loan, I would have laughed. I wouldn't have taken on the loan because I know I wouldn't have been able to make the payment.
Right.
So,
I mean, I agree with that, but I came from the Midwest where I bought my first house and it was in the low 100s. So I could see that, I could see someone, I had a friend of mine who had bad credit and some tax issues, but he got one good job, and buying a house for 75 grand wouldn't be all that financially
yeah. And that's a
dangerous,
very different.
but still be difficult to get a traditional
Yeah.
loan for. Like putting down 30% of 75,000 is fairly significant.
I think that's the easy thing to forget as Californians because we think
Right.
home loan, we're thinking like $500,000.
Easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but a way around that. So even when I was doing the credit restoration, we were working predominantly with people in places like regions like Indiana and stuff like that. And they were, the calls I was getting like, oh, what's the house you're looking to buy? Like, how much is it for?
Yeah.
Like, oh, 80,000. Like, how big is it? Oh, it's like 7 miles big. We get like 50.
7 miles.
7
yeah,
miles.
it's like
2,800 square feet.
Yeah, it's like 50,000 square acres. It's like, oh, I own half of Indianapolis. Really, for $80,000? Like, yeah, it was no big deal. They
What
were
is
just
your
going to
home
auction
payment?
it off.
Like
Hey,
$622.
it's like $8 a month
Yeah.
plus tax. And
Less
so-
than your car payment.
and so it becomes interesting to me because if your credit score is around 520, 550, the worst I saw when I was working there was in the 4s. And within like 6 months, we were able to help get that person up into the 6s with that. So I don't understand why people wouldn't want to say, because then you don't have to buy the mortgage insurance that
Correct.
comes with it there.
Right.
So if you just rent an extra year, work on credit restoration, which isn't a hard business to get into. It's kind of an unknown thing, and you got to kind of navigate the waters a little bit, but it's not the hardest thing to do. You can do it yourself. And so
Right.
as you get better at it, or you pay somebody to do it for you there, you go up 100 points. You can get 100 points within a year and a half at the most, kind of thing. And then the mortgage insurance either goes down or goes away.
Yes, yeah.
And you don't have to you can still put the 3.5 down as opposed to your typical 20%. So there are ways around this without having to lax standards. I would prefer that standards stay high, and maybe I can't qualify. My credit score is not bad. It's around 7, but I have a lot of debt from student loan debt, so there's no way I could qualify for a loan right now because of the 50,000 year payment plan that I'm on. But the idea being, I would.
hear you.
What's that?
I hear you.
Yeah, so I would rather be
like that.
on that type of thing. But also, I know it is kind of the American dream to own the home.
Well, it's more.
there.
It's also more than that. And there's also financial. There's tax benefits from owning.
Yeah,
a
but you
home.
get tax benefits from renting too. You can write off your renter's insurance. You get money back for that. I mean, I've been renting my whole life. Probably not as good as
right.
owning,
Um,
but I don't
and
have
then
to pay
there's that-
property tax.
Then there's that. Yeah, no, property tax is significant, and in different states it varies.
What is it, like 200% here?
Actually, that's the one thing we're okay on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
I would have
passed-
never have guessed that.
There was a ballot initiative.
Wait. Don't say anything because the government might be listening.
Yeah.
Don't. Shh. Okay, it's over.
They might be listening.
So that'll be an interesting thing to watch. Kind of if it works or not. There, I do. Yeah, the adjustable rates, the balloon mortgage stuff was terrible.
I mean, it all comes down to kind of what Chris was implying is that don't buy a home when you can't afford it, and don't buy a home you can't afford. The balloon payment thing was so. Even back in the day, we were a lot younger, but I just remember thinking like, you didn't know this was coming. I mean, it was on every single statement that in 2008
Yeah.
you're gonna owe 25 grand. And then you foreclosed because you couldn't pay it. Like, which is a terrible place to be in. But you knew about it the moment you signed it when that balloon payment was coming or that rate was going to be adjusted. So
Yeah, but the
total bad thing to do. But you should have taken you off guard. Shouldn't have.
Well, one of
caught
the
you off guard.
things Chris and I were talking about is like the ethical dilemma that presents, right? Chris was making the argument that the job of the bank is to make money, and the job of the people who are putting out those loans, so we can count on them to be greedy,
Yeah.
right? So the government should do a better job of, what were you saying, regulating that, Chris?
Well, if the government's supposed to be the referee and the bank is supposed to make money, the bank is doing its job when it's greedy or when it does things to make money. But if it crosses the line, it's the government's job to be the referee.
To step in and
Yeah, if the
kibosh
government, so if these things are happening because both sides are being greedy, there's only one of the two parties involved is not doing their job, and that's the government.
Yeah. So for me, the argument goes a little bit further back where, we should be educating people on those things. And there's a moral responsibility for us as banks who are in the know to say, well, the person, based on their monthly income, or they probably can't afford this payment, or whatever, to make that judgment call. But maybe
that's what we talked about. We talked about that too, though. If there wasn't federal insurance, then the banks wouldn't loan people or make these loans in the first place.
Yeah. Right. So the idea being saying, look, count on we should count on banks being greedy, and we should regulate that greed, right? We should just assume it, and that will make it better instead of trying to just step in and interfere with the system. I think I'm a little bit more of an idealist in that, where I would say I would wish that as our JP Chase wouldn't loan to people
I agree.
who could, and would tell them why and show them how to do it.
I'm not saying out of luck they shouldn't have got those loans, but the reality is that as soon as that date was set and that rate was set, there's no way around that.
Yeah, you have to know.
You got to do something about that. And if foreclosure could have been, if that's an option for you, then that's an option. But I would have, you would hope they would explore other ways to get out of that before that inevitable time came.
Well, let us know your thoughts. Also, please watch The Big Short. Such a good movie if you haven't seen it yet. Seriously, so good.
All right, I'll watch it.
last one today. Donald Trump, and this is from the Washington Post, all right, and this is by
Here we go.
Gene Gerzoy and Nick Miller. Donald Trump thinks more countries should have nuclear weapons. All right. Just that title is terrifying. Any time you associate Donald Trump with nuclear anything, it makes me think of nuclear holocaust or nuclear repercussions from China or North Korea getting mad at something he says, some fat joke he makes of Kim Jong-un or something like that. And so according to Donald Trump, the U.S. should not try so hard to stop nuclear proliferation. And how would we best define that in a way that's simple to follow, Chris? Nuclear proliferation being other countries gaining nuclear weapons, right? That's pretty. And so on Sunday night during a Republican town hall debate hosted by Anderson Cooper, Trump declared that proliferation is going to happen anyway, quote unquote. And just a week earlier, Trump told the New York Times, "If Japan had that nuclear threat, I'm not sure that would be a bad thing for us. Nor would it be so bad," he said, "if South Korea and Saudi Arabia had nuclear weapons too." So you. Really breaking down Trump's assertion into two ideas. One, proliferation is inevitable, and two, it's good for the United States, as long as it's the allies who are going nuclear. What do we think? What do we think about that? Chris, I'll start with you.
Well, for one, there's, 9 countries-ish that have nuclear weapons? I think there's 8, and then
no idea.
I think it's assumed that Israel has them, even though I think they kind of say they don't.
Yeah, they just need plutonium. Depleted uranium for testing.
No, but so
research.
In 70 years, we've managed to keep, what are there, 180 something countries in the world?
I think it's like 206, something like
206 now. Yeah, and only 100 or 100 and whatever don't have nuclear weapons. Only 9 do. So I'd say that his saying that proliferation is inevitable is probably wrong.
Yeah, statistically.
Yeah.
There, and so we've been able to stop those things by sanctions, by threatening to not trade there, whatever it is, and so
which is a little strange to think about. That
it also shows
strong arming other countries not to
into not having them
do whatever they want.
When you're the biggest kid on the block, then sometimes
because my thought is on face value, it makes a little bit of sense, right? Like who are we to say that Japan, for example, can't have?
Yeah, that was Ron Paul's position actually.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. My only concern is what happens when those countries stop being our allies there.
Yeah, we're not giving them. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they can choose to do whatever they want with their nuclear arms at that point. Who are we to say that?
I'm just saying. I've been up and down the California coast, looking at all the turret buildings that they put in there.
Yeah.
And for World War II stuff, and that's terrifying to think like there's something just 8 minutes away from here. When we go down to the beach, and it's like, yeah, we could totally get nuked. Like we don't even have to leave the comfort of their own home in whatever place they're in. I don't think Japan would ever nuke us, but. The idea of nuclear umbrellas, troop deployments, arms sales. So we're really, what happens when we're no longer the world's hegemon, right? I think 2020 is the supposed year that I've seen some economists say that we'll no longer be the world power there. But I don't think we're as weak as people like Trump say that we are. I don't think
in our ability to sanction other countries.
Just militarily speaking. I mean, I know we still spend. It's like 4 times more on our military budget than China does. We have, the world's largest.
Is that one of his
army.
claims that our military is?
That's a Republican claim that the United States is losing face in the world stage, right? Because of Obama and doing things like bowing or apologizing.
Or making a nuclear deal with Iran and then coming out and saying, they're not following the spirit of the treaty.
Yeah.
When they don't a month later. He actually came out and said that.
Spirit of the treaty.
Yeah.
Which is why would you expect that? Like, anyway, so, we do have the world's most advanced nuclear arsenal, dynamic and growing economy, while rival economies are slowing and even declining.
So we can have them, but they can't.
And so,
it's a bit hypocritical, right?
Yeah, I do think it's a little bizarre.
Well, when and here's the pushback on that.
Not bizarre. It totally makes sense.
When the world looks to us to be the police there, do we not get to be the ones who kind of dictate the terms of how we police and what that policing looks like, right? Every country that not every, but a lot of countries that go through civil war ask for American aid, ask for American help and those types of things. So
I don't know if Saudi Arabia and Japan, other than maybe natural disaster.
Right. And so if there's some type of, we are seen as the humanitarian, yada, 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 in that kind of thing, or maybe we should be or shouldn't be as much. But the reality is that we are. And so are we not allowed then to do that in our terms, our rules?
It appears that we are, because everyone, other than a select few countries, seem to agree with our nuclear.
Yeah, and would never turn down our help, for trades, for goods, for other stuff there. So, I don't know, dude. I just don't know if I want more countries to have nuclear weapons. I don't even want the U.S. to have nuclear weapons.
I think that's a clear defining characteristic of this whole issue is that we have nuclear weapons, and we are the only country that has deployed nuclear weapons against another country. So it's really difficult for us to, sometimes it feels like as Americans, to be the deciding factor on who gets nuclear weapons when we're not going to ever get rid of ours, and we've already used them. So
I think kind of to your point, Josh, it is fair to say, hey, we're not going to, or it would be more fair to say, we're not going to tell you can't have nuclear weapons, but we're not going to trade with you. And we're pretty much the biggest consumer society in the world.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can kind of use that pressure. You're not telling someone they can't do it, technically, but...
Right, it just comes with these strings on it.
Well, this is just, we don't want to deal with people who are.
Right, and here's the embargo. Right, I mean, it would just be a Cuba embargo all over again.
But you wouldn't even have to go that far, I don't think.
No, you wouldn't.
But it would certainly be crippling to their economy. I think you're right in those types of things, especially, I don't know. I mean, I think the only country we probably can't mess with or buck that easily would be China. Like, I don't...
I think we're doing a good thing, and I think we should limit the amount of nuclear weapons that countries have. I just think there's definitely two sides to this, or more than two sides.
It would also be nice to see the U.S. regulate itself. There, I don't know how you do that as
they have agreed to limit the amount of weapons U.S. has, reduce the amount of nuclear weapons, close down nuclear facilities, launch facilities, things like that.
Yeah. So, I don't know, man. Just nukes freak me out.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
I don't want Trump as president. I don't want to have the thought of that guy having the codes. That kind of thing. That sounds like singularly the worst idea in human history. There, it's like, why did you nuke Tijuana? It was like there was no point to do that, and it's right next to the border. Why are you being a jerk?
That would be terrible.
So, so this article finishes. A look at history shows us that nuclear proliferation is anything but inevitable. Non-proliferation efforts have been surprisingly successful, even when the U.S. was weaker than it was today. I don't want to see more countries gain that type of stuff. But what I do want to see, you know what I want to see, Chris? I want to see people follow us on Facebook. I want to see them connect with us on Twitter. And I want to see them like and rate and subscribe our stuff via YouTube, faithandwhatever.com. We're also have a thought for you here. We're getting ready to consider launching like a little vlog set where if we're having individual thoughts kind of like on religion topics that we've talked about, or we want to go deeper on this kind of stuff. And we'd like to know if that would be interesting to people there. So if you could leave a comment or something, or send us an email and let us know if you would like to see us dive deeper into these
one of our segments.
thoughts. Into something like that. It would just be fun. Maybe just a different way to kind of explore a little bit. I'm at Josh_Carmen. That's Garrett at TStudentLife. James is at James YUILE, and Chris is at Marion Ranch. We'll look forward to connecting with you soon.
See ya.